In 1937, Napoleon Hill published a book based on 20 years of research into over 500 of the wealthiest and most successful people of his era. People like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, and Thomas Edison. He studied what they had in common, not their luck, not their background, but the actual principles that drove their success. That book was Think and Grow Rich. It has sold more than 100 million copies. It remains, nearly 90 years later, one of the most influential books on success and wealth ever written. And the 13 principles inside it are still quoted, taught, and applied by entrepreneurs, investors, and wealth builders today. This audiobook breaks down those 13 principles in plain modern language, what they actually mean, why they work, and how you apply them to your financial life right now. Welcome to Mindset Wealth Blueprint. Lesson 1. Desire is the starting point of all wealth. Napoleon Hill opens his entire framework with this principle because he believed everything else in the book is useless without it. Desire. Not a wish, not a hope. A burning, definite desire for a specific amount of wealth or a specific outcome. Hill makes a sharp distinction that most people miss. A wish is passive. It floats in the background of your mind without demanding anything of you. A burning desire is active. It organizes your thoughts, your time, and your behavior around achieving it. He outlines a specific process for transforming desire into wealth. First, decide the exact amount of money or the exact outcome you want. Not a vague, "I want to be rich," but a specific number or result. Second, determine what you intend to give in return. Because nothing of value is acquired without something given in exchange, whether that is labor, service, or value creation. Third, establish a definite date by which you intend to possess it. Fourth, create a definite plan for achieving it and begin immediately, whether or not you feel ready. Fifth, write all of this down in a clear, concise statement. Sixth, read this statement aloud twice daily, once before bed and once upon waking, while visualizing yourself already in possession of the outcome. This might sound almost ritualistic, and in some ways it is, but the underlying mechanism is something modern psychology actually supports. When you repeatedly and vividly hold a specific goal in mind, you are training your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters incoming information, to notice opportunities, resources, and connections relevant to that goal that you would otherwise walk right past. Most people never get past the wishing stage. They want more money the way they want better weather. Passively, without a plan, without a deadline, without genuine commitment. Hill's first principle is a direct challenge to that passivity. Get specific, get definite, and let that specificity organize your actions. Lesson 2. Faith is belief acted upon. The second principle is faith, but not in the religious sense Hill is most often misunderstood to mean. Faith, in this context, is the state of mind that comes from genuinely believing your goal is achievable, combined with consistent action that reflects that belief. Hill argues that faith can be deliberately developed through repetition. The subconscious mind, he says, cannot easily distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one, which means that consistently and vividly imagining yourself succeeding, combined with taking real action toward that success, gradually builds a genuine, deep-seated belief that the outcome is possible. This matters enormously for wealth building because doubt is one of the most reliable wealth destroyers there is. The investor who does not believe the market will recover sells at the bottom. The entrepreneur who does not believe their business can work quits during the difficult early stage. The person who does not believe they deserve financial success unconsciously sabotages their own progress. Faith, built through repetition and reinforced through action, is the antidote. Hill is not suggesting blind optimism divorced from reality. He is describing a deliberately cultivated confidence that, when combined with sound planning and consistent effort, allows you to persist through the inevitable setbacks that come with building anything of value. The practical application is straightforward. Spend time daily visualizing your financial goals as already achieved. Pair that visualization with concrete action toward those goals. And notice, over time, how your underlying belief in your own capability shifts from hopeful to genuinely confident. Lesson 3. Autosuggestion. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself. Autosuggestion is Hill's term for the deliberate practice of feeding your subconscious mind thoughts, instructions, and images that align with what you want to achieve. It is, in modern language, a structured form of self-talk and visualization. Hill's argument is that your subconscious mind acts on whatever dominant thoughts it receives, whether you deliberately plant those thoughts or allow random, often negative thoughts to take root by default. Most people's subconscious is shaped accidentally through whatever fears, doubts, and limiting beliefs happen to be reinforced throughout their life. Autosuggestion is the practice of taking deliberate control of that process instead. This connects directly to a concept we have covered in other audiobooks on this channel, the idea of reprogramming your financial beliefs. Hill was essentially describing this process nearly 90 years before modern psychology developed the language of cognitive reframing and neuroplasticity. The practical method Hill recommends is specific. Take the written statement of your definite desire from Lesson 1. Read it aloud, with feeling, twice a day. As you read it, see yourself already possessing what you have written. Feel the emotions associated with having achieved it. This is not passive reading. It requires genuine emotional engagement for the subconscious impression to take hold. Most people's internal dialogue about money is dominated by scarcity, doubt, and fear, often without them even noticing it is happening. Autosuggestion is the deliberate practice of replacing that default programming with intentional, wealth-oriented thinking, repeated consistently enough that it becomes the new default. Lesson 4. Specialized knowledge beats general knowledge. Hill makes a point in this chapter that surprised many readers in his era and remains underappreciated today. General education and intelligence alone do not produce wealth. Specialized knowledge applied toward a specific purpose does. He points out that many of history's wealthiest individuals were not formally well-educated in the traditional sense. Henry Ford had limited formal schooling. What separated them was not broad knowledge, but deep, specialized expertise in a specific area, combined with the organizational ability to apply that knowledge productively. This principle has a direct modern application. The person who has broad, generic knowledge about many things is rarely as valuable in the marketplace as the person who has deep, specific expertise in a niche that the market values. Specialized knowledge is what allows you to solve problems other people cannot solve, which is what creates the value that gets compensated. Hill also makes an important distinction here. He does not say you personally need to possess all the specialized knowledge required to build wealth. He says you need access to it, either by acquiring it yourself or by organizing a team of people who collectively possess it. This is why partnerships, mentors, and advisors matter so much in wealth building. You do not need to become an expert in every domain. You need to either develop genuine expertise in your core area or surround yourself with people who have it in the areas you do not. The practical lesson is to identify the specific knowledge gap between where you are and where you want to be financially, and then close that gap deliberately through study, mentorship, or strategic partnership, rather than relying on general education or motivation alone. Lesson 5. Imagination is the workshop of the mind. Hill describes imagination as the faculty through which all plans, ideas, and innovations are created. Nothing is built in the physical world, he argues, that was not first built in the imagination. He distinguishes between two forms of imagination. Synthetic imagination takes existing ideas, concepts, or plans and rearranges them into new combinations. Most business innovation, he argues, happens this way, not through inventing something from nothing, but through combining existing elements in a new way. Creative imagination, by contrast, is the faculty through which genuinely new ideas emerge. What Hill describes as the mind's connection to ideas and hunches that seem to arrive from beyond ordinary, conscious thought. For practical wealth building, synthetic imagination is where most opportunity lives. The person who notices that a successful business model in one industry could be applied to an underserved niche in another industry is using synthetic imagination. The investor who recognizes a pattern from a previous market cycle and applies that pattern to a current situation is using synthetic imagination. Most genuinely valuable business and investment ideas are not entirely novel. They are familiar ideas applied in new contexts. Hill's practical advice is to exercise this faculty deliberately. Spend dedicated time thinking about your goals, your industry, and your opportunities without the pressure of immediate execution. Allow your mind to combine and recombine ideas. Many of history's most valuable business ideas emerged not from frantic effort, but from quiet, deliberate thinking time that most people never schedule into their lives. Building wealth requires more than effort. It requires the ideas that effort gets applied to, and those ideas come from a faculty that, like a muscle, gets stronger with deliberate use. Lesson 6. Organized planning turns desire into reality. This is the principle where Hill moves from internal mindset work into concrete external action. Desire, faith, and imagination are necessary, he argues, but insufficient on their own. They must be channeled into an organized, definite plan of action. Hill outlines a specific approach to planning that remains remarkably relevant. First, ally yourself with a group of people, what he calls a mastermind alliance, which we will cover in more depth in a later lesson, who can help create and execute your plan. Second, before finalizing your plan, determine what advantages and benefits you can offer the people you need cooperation from, because no plan succeeds without genuine value exchange. Third, meet with your allies regularly until a definite plan has been perfected. Fourth, maintain perfect harmony with your group, because friction and disorganization destroy plans before they can succeed. Hill also makes a critical point about plan failure that most people misunderstand. If your first plan fails, he says, replace it with a new plan. If that new plan fails, replace it with another, until you find a plan that works. The failure of a plan, he argues, is simply useful information, not a referendum on whether your goal is achievable. This reframe is enormously important for anyone building wealth through business or investing. Most successful financial outcomes are not the result of the first plan working perfectly. They are the result of persistent iteration, trying a plan, learning from what happened, adjusting, and trying again. The person who treats their first failed plan as proof that success is impossible quits before they ever discover the plan that would have worked. Lesson 7. Decision is the difference between wishing and achieving. Hill studied the most successful people of his era and found a striking pattern. They were decisive. They reached decisions quickly and changed them slowly, if ever. The people who failed to accumulate wealth, by contrast, reached decisions slowly. if at all, and changed them frequently and easily. This finding has a clear modern explanation. Indecision is exhausting, both psychologically and practically. Every decision left unmade continues to consume mental energy and delays the action that produces results. The person constantly weighing options, seeking more information, and waiting for certainty before committing is rarely the person who builds something significant. Because building requires committed, sustained action, and sustained action requires decisions that have actually been made. Hill also points out something important about influence and decision-making. He found that the majority of people who fail to accumulate significant wealth are easily influenced by the opinions of others. They form an idea, mention it to a few people, and abandon it the moment someone expresses doubt. The wealthy people he studied, by contrast, made their own decisions based on their own analysis and rarely allowed the casual opinions of others to derail their plans. This does not mean ignoring genuinely informed advice or refusing to update your beliefs in light of new evidence. It means developing the discipline to make decisions based on your own careful analysis rather than the reflexive opinions of people who have not done that analysis themselves. The practical lesson is to practice decisiveness deliberately. When you have done the necessary research and analysis, commit to a decision rather than continuing to deliberate indefinitely. And once committed, give that decision a genuine chance to play out before abandoning it based on someone else's casual doubt. Lesson 8. Persistence is the sustained effort that produces results. Hill calls persistence the quality that most clearly separates the people who succeed from the people who fail to accumulate wealth, even when the failure group has equal or greater talent, intelligence, and opportunity. He observed that most people give up at the first sign of significant resistance. They start a business and quit when the early months are harder than expected. They begin investing and stop when the market drops. They pursue a goal with enthusiasm and abandon it the moment enthusiasm fades and only discipline remains. Hill identifies several factors that build persistence. A definite purpose backed by burning desire, which is why Lesson 1 matters so much, because vague goals produce vague effort, while specific, deeply desired goals produce sustained effort. Self-reliance built through belief in your own ability to execute your plan. Definite plans that are organized and acted upon consistently, because a clear next action is easier to take than an ambiguous one. And the habit of accurate thinking, which means basing decisions on facts rather than guesses or wishful thinking. He also makes a point that I think is genuinely important for anyone building wealth today. Persistence is not the same as stubbornness. Persistence means continuing to pursue your definite goal despite obstacles. It does not mean refusing to adjust your specific plan when evidence suggests adjustment is needed. The persistent person keeps the destination fixed while remaining flexible about the route. The practical application is to expect resistance as a normal part of any worthwhile pursuit, rather than as evidence that something has gone wrong. The discomfort of difficulty is not a signal to stop. It is, more often than not, simply the price of admission for the outcome you are working toward. Lesson 9. The power of the mastermind. Hill defines the mastermind principle as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people, working in harmony toward a definite purpose. He argues that no individual, working entirely alone, has ever accumulated significant wealth. That behind every great fortune is a group of people whose combined knowledge, skill, and effort made the outcome possible. This is one of the most practically important principles in the entire book, and it directly contradicts the popular myth of the lone genius entrepreneur who builds an empire single-handedly. Even history's most celebrated business figures relied heavily on partners, advisors, and teams whose contributions were essential to the outcome, but often go uncredited in the popular narrative. Hill describes the mastermind effect as something beyond simple cooperation. When two or more minds coordinate in genuine harmony toward a shared goal, he argues, the combined intelligence and creative output exceeds what either person could produce independently, not just additively, but in a way that produces ideas and solutions neither person would have reached alone. The practical application for wealth building is to deliberately seek out and build relationships with people whose knowledge, skills, and perspective complement your own. This might be a business partner, a mentor, a small group of peers pursuing similar financial goals, or a team you build around a specific venture. The key is genuine harmony and shared purpose, not just transactional networking, but real collaborative alignment toward outcomes that matter to everyone involved. Most people try to build wealth in isolation, treating financial success as a solo project. Hill's research suggests this is one of the most limiting approaches available. The people who built the largest fortunes in his study almost universally did so in coordination with others. Lesson 10. Transmute your energy into productive action. This principle, which Hill originally framed around a specific psychological drive, is really about something broader and more universally applicable: the ability to take strong emotional energy, whatever its source, and channel it into productive, focused effort rather than letting it dissipate unused or get expressed destructively. Hill observed that the most successful people he studied had an unusual capacity to direct intense emotional energy, ambition, competitive drive, even frustration, into their work, rather than allowing that energy to leak out through distraction, complaint, or unfocused activity. This is a genuinely useful modern insight when you consider how much emotional energy most people generate every day without directing it anywhere productive. Frustration at a difficult boss. Competitive drive watching someone else's success. The restless energy of ambition with no specific outlet. All of that energy is available. The question is whether it gets channeled into building something or dissipated through complaining, scrolling, or unfocused anxiety. The practical application is to notice when you are experiencing strong emotional energy, positive or negative, and consciously redirect it into the next action on your financial or business goals rather than letting it dissipate. Frustrated about your current financial situation? That frustration is fuel. Direct it into an hour of focused work on your side income instead of venting about it. Excited and energized after a win? Channel that momentum immediately into the next task, rather than letting the energy fade through celebration alone. This is a skill, and like every skill in this audiobook, it strengthens with deliberate practice. Lesson 11. The subconscious mind is the connecting link. Hill describes the subconscious mind as the mechanism through which the other principles in this book actually produce results. The conscious mind sets the intention through desire, faith, and autosuggestion. But it is the subconscious mind, operating continuously below conscious awareness, that translates those intentions into the instincts, hunches, and behavioral patterns that produce real-world outcomes. The modern understanding of this is less mystical than Hill's original framing, but no less significant. Your subconscious mind handles an enormous amount of pattern recognition, decision-making, and behavioral automation without your conscious awareness. The habits you have built, the instinctive judgments you make, the automatic responses you have to financial situations, all of this runs through subconscious processing that conscious willpower alone cannot fully override. This is precisely why repetition matters so much in everything we have covered so far in this audiobook. A single read-through of your written financial goals will not meaningfully shift your subconscious patterns. Repeated, emotionally engaged practice over weeks and months will. This is also why the environment you immerse yourself in matters so much. The books you read, the people you spend time with, the financial content you consume all feed your subconscious mind material that eventually shapes your instinctive behavior. Hill's practical guidance is to deliberately and consistently feed your subconscious mind images, statements, and ideas aligned with the wealth you want to build. Through the practices outlined in earlier lessons, trusting that consistent input eventually produces aligned instinctive behavior, even in moments when your conscious mind is occupied elsewhere. Lesson 12. The brain is a broadcasting and receiving station for ideas. This is one of Hill's more abstract principles, and the way to make it practically useful is to focus on what it points toward, rather than the metaphysical framing he used to describe it in 1937. Hill's underlying observation is that some of the most valuable ideas in business history seem to arrive not through deliberate, step-by-step reasoning, but through sudden flashes of insight, often during moments of relaxation, rest, or activities unrelated to the problem being solved. He attributed this to the mind's capacity to receive ideas, almost as if tuning into a frequency, when it is sufficiently prepared through prior thought and sufficiently relaxed to allow the insight to surface. The modern psychological explanation involves what is sometimes called the incubation effect, the documented phenomenon where stepping away from a problem after sustained focused effort allows the subconscious mind to continue processing it in the background, often producing the breakthrough insight precisely when conscious effort is no longer being applied. This has a genuinely practical application for wealth building. Many of the best business ideas, investment insights, and strategic solutions do not arrive through forced, continuous effort. They arrive after a period of focused work, followed by genuine rest, a walk, a shower, a quiet morning, sleep. The person who never gives their mind this kind of unstructured space rarely experiences the insight that this kind of mental processing produces. The practical lesson is to build deliberate rest and reflection into your work on financial goals, not as a break from the real work, but as part of it. Focused effort, followed by genuine mental rest, is often more productive than continuous, unbroken effort, because the rest is when much of the actual creative processing happens. Lesson 13. The Sixth Sense. Trusting refined judgment. Hill's final principle describes what he calls the sixth sense, a refined intuitive judgment that he observed in the most accomplished people he studied, developed only after the prior 12 principles had been thoroughly mastered and internalized. The modern, less mystical way to understand this is as expert intuition, the well-documented phenomenon where individuals with deep experience and pattern exposure in a domain develop genuinely reliable instincts that outperform slower, deliberate analysis in situations where rapid judgment is required. This is not magic. It is the result of so much accumulated pattern recognition, built through the disciplined application of the other 12 principles, that the mind begins producing accurate judgments faster than conscious reasoning can articulate the basis for them. This is why Hill places this principle last. He is explicit that this refined intuition only becomes reliable after genuine mastery of the foundational principles, after building real specialized knowledge, after sustained persistent effort, after meaningful experience making decisions and observing their outcomes. It is not a shortcut available to beginners. It is the eventual reward of disciplined practice over time. For wealth building specifically, this shows up as the experienced investor who senses something is off about a deal before they can fully articulate why, and is later proven right. The seasoned entrepreneur who feels confident about a decision in a way junior team members do not yet have the experience to share. This instinct is earned, not given, and it is earned specifically through consistent application of the other 12 principles over a meaningful period of time. The practical lesson is patience with your own development. The refined judgment that feels almost effortless in experienced wealth builders was built through years of disciplined practice with the principles that came before it. Trust the process. The instinct comes after the work, not instead of it. 13 principles, nearly 90 years of influence, still as applicable to building wealth today as they were in 1937. If this audio added value, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe to Mindset Wealth Blueprint for more content like this every week. And drop a comment telling us which of these 13 lessons resonated most. We read every one. Thank you for being here. Now, go build.